Alright, so let's take a look at the Vampiric Undead. I've had a chance to look at this army a little bit. I have not played it, so everything that I'm about to say is theoretical, but there is a theme to the Vampiric Undead, as I'm sure you'll become aware of, and if you play the vampire counts, it's very similar, but the main things about this army is that they are undead, so they're basically unbreakable. However, they crumble. There's a big price to messing up your morale rolls. So the quality is going to become a factor if you're not careful. So a skilled player, I think, is going to do very well with the Vampiric Undead, because there are combinations and tactics that you must employ in order to play this faction very well. So let's go through the units here, starting with the Vampire Master. The one that jumps out at me is the Blood Chalice. That means that this model and its unit gets regeneration. So keep that in mind when you are looking for the elite troops on the board, the troops that you want to keep pounding and just melting everybody else away. You want to preserve that unit, then you put the Count in charge of that unit. And I'm thinking the Vampiric Knights down here, Vampire Knights, these are your best guys, your best troops right here. I could be tempted to put them on the Skeleton Guard. I think that's another big unit to use, but I can't see spending the points on the Vampire Master and then going for another option when you can just take a champion and take the same option for cheaper. So Necromancer is 40 and 60, and same thing 40 and 60, but you pay 20 points less to get a Necromancer or Master Necromancer. So I would save the champion for the caster role, especially because the champion can be a Corpse Master where they get a free Raise the Dead, even though they're only caster 1, but that's more expensive than the other casters. So let's take a quick look at what kind of spells you get when you become a Necromancer. So they get Vigor. Target friendly unit within 12 inches gets +1 to hit rolls the next time it fights in melee. And that's really good because the quality on a lot of these units are not very high. Zombies, ghouls. Let me see, are the ghouls pretty good? I think they're 5s. Yeah, no, they're quality 4. So the Drains, the Zombies, the cheaper troops, they're going to benefit from Vigor. And so then we get Spectral Wind, target enemy unit within 12 inches. That's a good damage. Takes 2 hits with AP2, so that's good for going after armored, semi-armored units. Dance of Death. Target 2 friendly units within 12 inches gets +2 next time in advance, so this helps some of your troops move quickly, especially the zombies. That can help the zombies move around very quickly. Deadly Gaze. This is a damage spell against big monster or tank or vehicle. Invocation. Target 2 friendly units. They get regeneration, so that's a good one to get because you want to keep your troops alive as long as possible, and regeneration is one of the best ways to do that. Target enemy, in this game it's very offensive, so when you get a chance to put in a very powerful defensive thing like this or Blood Chalice, I would take it. Target enemy within 18 inches, 1 hit with Blast 9. Oh, that is a Horde Sweeper. So yeah, so that's their spells are good. They're very thematic, so that works for me. So they can get protected armor. Both the Vampire Master and the champion can get protected, which means they reduce the amount of armor piercing against them. Again, defensive, so it's very good. They get similar weapons to the Vampire Master, except the Vampire Master gets heavy. They get an extra AP to their weapons. And then they get a skeletal steed, abysmal beast. Those are the only two options for the champion, whereas the vampire gets skeletal steed, winged steed, winged terror, and zombie dragon. So they get some pretty nice options here for the vampire master, and that takes up to 15 if you take that dragon. All right, the ghoul leader. Ghoul leader can be a necromancer also, so that's another cheap way of getting a necromancer. Frightful gaze. That's a good option if you want to break the enemy and get them running. Under certain circumstances, certain tactics, that would be very powerful. So if you're not going to go with a caster, then I would definitely go Frightful Gaze for the ghoul leader. And then we get to our core unit, Stitch Zombies. I'm looking forward to this one. They are very low quality, 5/6, but they get 20 attacks for the basic 65 points. Now they're slow, but if you give them Rising Dead, which now you're talking a 90-point unit, so it's not as cheap as zombies really should be. But Rising Dead means that you put them in ambush and pop up 1 inch away. So that slow should not come into factor if you do your ambushing right. And that is very thematic where, you get some cheap ambushing units, some zombies, and then every turn you're just popping up all over the board with these zombies. It sounds really cool, and this is probably the unit that I'm looking most forward to. I may get into Vampiric Undead because of the zombies. I got to see how they look. I mean, if they look good, I might go ahead and start printing out some vampires and playing them. But I was a little underwhelmed by the Drained soldiers. They just wanted to put in some generic soldiers. And the Drained are what is low quality, or semi-low quality troops. They have hand weapons. You give them halberds or spears. But other than that, they're pretty generic. They're undead, so they're unbreakable, but they crumble. And then down here we got Drained archers that haven't come out yet. And you could see there's a comparison between Drained and Skeleton. So if we go to Drained soldiers and then the Skeleton Guard not only have better ratings, it's the same price, but you get half the amount of Skeleton Guard. But here's the deal with the Skeleton Guard. They get these Reap weapons. Check that out. Enemies that roll to block hits from this weapon take 1 additional wound for each unmodified result of 1 that they roll. So that is really cool. You're punishing somebody for rolling very poorly. And so I like these Skeleton Guard. They are a very good unit, a must-have, I think, in any vampiric army. Getting back to the archers. Now, the Skeletal Watch, again, they're higher quality, but they also get rending on their shots. So that's really what you're paying for, is better quality. You're going to hit more, you're going to survive a little bit better, but you get rending as well, so that helps. When you click on rending, they get -1 to regeneration, so anybody that has a regeneration army, this is who they're going to be shooting at, the regeneration units. So I think they're very handy, the Skeletal Watch. I would personally pick Skeletal Watch and the Skeleton Guard over the Drained, and just use Stitch Zombies, Ghouls as your regular hitters instead of Drained. That's just my personal opinion. Alright, so we got Skeleton Guard, Ghouls. They're poison. In Warhammer, they got 2 attacks, and here they only get 1, and there's no upgrade to get them to 2 attacks, but they do have poison, so they kind of get that. Again, they stop regeneration pretty well, and you have to re-roll defense rolls of 6 when blocking hits. So they're very good against the more hoardy armies that have low quality troops. That's who I'd send them against. In addition to that, they have regeneration. Again, I'm a big fan of regeneration, so ghouls have that. So that's pretty cool, and they're fairly cheap. So did Drained archers. Watch Zombie Wolves. Now there are 2 scout units that I saw in this army. One is the zombie wolves and the other are the werewolves. Now what's interesting is that the werewolves have Strider, and the zombie wolves do not have Strider. And I thought that was strange, but they do have Fast. So these are your two scouts. If you have a lot of terrain, you go with the werewolves. If you need somebody to get into the action faster, then you go with the zombie wolves. So they're really your scout cavalry. They have a lot of attacks, so that's good. They're furious, so they can do a lot of damage in the flank. Of course, they're fast. They get to be undead, but the werewolves are higher quality. I like them a lot, but they're very expensive. But they are your heavy-hitting scouts, and they don't worry about difficult terrain. So they're very mobile, even though they're not fast. I like them. I like the werewolves. I'm interested to see what their models are going to look like. But those are your two scouts, and then of course you got your cavalry. You've got the skeleton knights and the vampiric knights. The vampire knights are your best troops. That's why I say put that count with them and give them regeneration. That is a really good idea. And the reason I don't really think about putting regeneration on infantry, I'll get to it when we get to the wagons, but here are the vampiric knights. They're your best troops. They're going to do a lot of damage. Put that lance on them. So worth it. Get AP2 and charging for just 15 points. In fact, I'd be tempted to go ahead and put a double unit and just start wailing on everybody in their path. That would be a lot of fun. So they're undead, furious. Again, you roll a 6, counts as 2 hits. They're fast. They hit almost everything. Love the vampiric knights. The skeleton knights are your basic cavalry. You know, they're good. They're good quality, good defense. They're going to do some damage. They already got lance on there. So yeah, they're good cavalry. But if I had to choose, I would pick the vampire knights. All right. So now we get into the more monster stuff. Bat swarms. Of all the swarms, I like this one probably the best. I mean, they got ambush, intrinsic, they're fast, they fly, they're undead, and they're 5/5. Some of the swarms are 6/6, so I like the bat swarms. In a pinch, they're good for ambushing. Same thing for giant bats. They're a little bit higher quality. Of course, they're more points. And so here you're going to get 9 attacks with Reap. And remember, we saw Reap with the skeletons. And yeah, it is a very cool rule. Although they don't have a lot of armor piercing, so when you get that high in points, you do want some sort of armor piercing, or at least an option for it. But since they have ambush, flying, furious, they're going to be able to pick their target pretty easily. Ghoul Horrors, that's coming out this month. They've got the Poison Claws. They have regeneration, tough undead. It's just the bigger brothers of the ghouls that we saw up here. And where is it? Where are they? Here they are. Alright, so the ghouls... Let's see if I can... Oops. Alright, so the ghouls, they'll get 5 attacks with poison for 60 points. Whereas the Ghoul Horrors more than double, and they get 9 attacks. I don't know. I prefer the ghouls for the price, because you have the same quality, not the same defense. You don't get as many attacks, but I mean, if you double those ghouls, you now have more attacks than the Ghoul Horrors. So really just a preference. I would prefer to take the ghouls over the horrors. And then we've got the bat horrors, and the reason why I would take them over the bat swarms, again, the giant bats and the bat horrors. Oops, sorry. Let me get back here. Giant bats have Reap, and the bat horrors have Reap as well. They have no upgrades. Ambush, flying, furious, tough, undead. These guys are, Well, again, that's a lot of points, but you do have quality 3. So bat horrors are pretty cool. Again, I think it's just preference, whether you want to see them on the board or not. I think there are better options, but if you want a really hard-hitting ambush unit, these are your guys. Alright, so let's get into the vehicles and monsters. Bat Beast, Deadly Fang, 6 attacks. So again, you're competing with the Bat Horrors here. A little bit better defense, a little bit cheaper. This would get 9 attacks, this only gets 6. It does get Fear and Tough 6. Yeah, it's I would go with the Bat Horrors, to be perfectly honest, over the Bat Beast as far as the points are concerned. But yes, it's the bats are worth it. And then we got a Bat Dragon. Let's see how this thing does. 8 attacks, Stomp with 8, armor piercing, so that's good. Fear 2, Tough 12. But again, you're talking a lot of points for that. So again, I think that's personal preference if you like it. Zombie Dragon, that's the one that I would think of, but look at the quality. It's only 4. They get less attacks than the Bat Dragon, but it does get a breath attack. So on you pick a before attacking, roll a die. On a 2-up, one enemy unit within 6 inches in line of sight takes 1 hit with blast 3 and AP 1. So all right, so that's going to hit a lot. So if you add the 3 in there, so you're talking 13. This would have 12. You get an extra, no, the same type of fear. Oh, the Bat Dragon doesn't get ambushed like the Bat Beast. Yeah, again, I think that's personal preference if you want it. But now we get into the wagons, and here I think is where the strategy and the tactics really come into play for the Vampiric undead. So I was looking at the corpse wagon first, because the corpse pile, that's the one that you get regeneration. Once per activation, pick one friendly unit within 6. So this is what I would put in the middle of my line with my skeleton guard in the middle, and then every turn just give them regeneration every time they, the next time they take a wound. So turn 1, you give one of your units regeneration. Turn 2, which is when you're probably going to start getting into the fighting, you give a second unit regeneration. And then 3rd and 4th, you can just re-up that regeneration. But it can also raise dead. So if you get a hole in your line, somebody wipes out your skeletons, then you could just throw up the zombies to fill that gap. So I like the corpse wagon a lot. I think it's something that is going to multiply your army fairly quickly. Instead of getting a bunch of counts, which is going to cost you about 100 points each for 200, almost 200 points, or actually with the corpse piles can be 225, you're going to be able to pop that regeneration and raise the dead. I think it's worth it personally, so I like the corpse wagon. Now the Deathly Chariot, it has Frightful Gaze, so it is a debuff on people's morale. And so what happens is, if you get in there quickly, just send it out as quickly as possible. Try to find the weak part of your enemy line, and then just every activation, you just pop that debuff onto them as quick as possible. Remember, this is fast. So even if you're, let's see, you're going to be 12 inches away, so your first move, you just make sure you're in the front line in front of somebody that you want to debuff on the first turn. And so if they don't come out and they're 24 inches away, that means that you will be moving at 16 inches and then a 12-inch Frightful Gaze, so you can pick anybody pretty much on their front line to get that morale hit, because it sticks with them. You pick one enemy unit within 12 inches, which gets -2 to its next morale test roll. Doesn't have to be this turn. So it just kind of sticks them. You just go down their line, just Frightful Gazing all their units that you want to break, and yeah, just that's a really good tactic there for the Deathly Chariot. Now, is it the Funeral coach, they get fear 1. So the funeral coach should then go into that line where you had the frightful gaze, and they have a better chance of breaking the line. So they're good. If you send in your troops, wear them down, then send in the funeral coach to break the lines and make them run away, because you have the deathly chariot, give them the frightful gaze, then you send in, say, skeletons or something to chop up the enemy. They're probably not going to run until they take enough hits, and then the funeral coach can come in and break that line. They get the -2 on their roll, and yeah, you're punching holes in their line with this deathly chariot, funeral coach, and then one other regular unit to chop them up a little bit. So yeah, this is where tactics come in. And of course, maiden chariot you can seduce, where you can use the frightful, let's see, yeah, so deathly chariot, maiden chariot are the combo. You frightful gaze them, -2 to their next, you seduce them, so we get within 12. They have to take a morale test. If failed, you may move it up to 6 inches in any direction. You don't have to move forward or turn or anything. Just basically zap them 6 inches in any direction that you want. This could be a good way to start off the game. They're trying to hold back a unit so they don't get shot or something, and make them come out so that your cavalry or somebody can go and just charge them on that first turn. And so if you get them, let's see, so if you're 24 inches away, 6 inches, so that's 18. You would need a very fast unit in order to do that. I don't think there's anything that could do that. So you can't get a charge on the first turn. However, if they move forward and then you nail them with the maiden chariot to move them forward again, that 12 inches, now you're going to be in range of that cavalry attack. So yeah, you can really mess somebody up with these chariot combinations. I highly recommend looking at them. Maiden chariot, funeral coach, deathly chariot, corpse wagon. I would get as many as possible to really mess up the enemy and be all over the place. So their chariots are really good. I think they're very useful, and they seem like they would be a very fun set of combinations that you could just throw onto your opponent. So that's the Vampiric Undead. Personally, not something that I would normally get into. I may start making them once those Stitch zombies come out and the Vampiric cavalry. I don't know. I gotta see how I feel about it. I'm still working on a lot of other things that I'm printing, so I just don't have the printer time to get these things out. But we'll see. They do look like a fun. If you are into vampires and zombies and so forth, they did a great job on this one. I really. Normally I wouldn't play it, but the way that they have it set up, I think I'm at least thinking about it. So what do you think? Do you think the vampires are going to be a good army? Do they look like as fun army as I think they are? And would you play them? Thanks for watching.